Hi, my name is Jacqueline Whitaker, and this is my presentation for my Innovation lesson plan. I do have a Word document of the lesson plan attached, but I just wanted to step-by-step walk you through it so you can kind of see my thought process for my lesson plan. These are the engineering problem-solving steps that I used in my lesson plan. Step number 1, define the problem. Step number 2, list possible solutions. Step number 3, evaluate and rank the possible solutions. Step number 4, develop a detailed plan for the most attractive solutions. Step number 5, reevaluate the plan to check desirability. Step number 6, implement the plan. And finally, step number 7, check the results. And return to step number 4 if you need to develop a new plan and go through and implement it again. So the real world problem that my students would be addressing is how can we most effectively clean up an oil spill? Now, for reference, I teach second grade, and the first step in my district's lesson plan is called the activator or the activation strategy, where we try to hook the students and get them excited and engaged about what we're going to be teaching. And my activation for this lesson would be to show a student-friendly video about oil spills. This video breaks down oil spills in a way that my students would understand. It explains why they happen and what happens to animals and other things in oceans and big bodies of water when there is an oil spill. So I would go ahead and play this for them to start my lesson off. The next step in my lesson plans is the teaching step, and this is where we give instruction to the students. This is where the engineering step number 1 would come in to find the problem. I would ask students if they thought that oil spills are a problem, then I would ask them why or why not. This would generate a discussion, and if I know my students as well as I think they do, I do think that they would all find a problem with oil spills because of the damage that it can cause. And I think that would help them to understand why this is a real world problem. Engineering step number 2 would come in the teaching portion as well, where we would list the possible solutions. So this is where I would introduce the materials to students and get them familiar with them. They would have bins filled with water, and I would probably just use vegetable oil just to mimic an oil spill. And then they would have a lot of different things as well. Cotton balls, paper towels, spoons, feathers, just all sorts of things that they could use. And so I would just show them all of the materials so they can start to think about what might work to clean up the oil spill, and just so that they would know what is available to them. Then in my lesson plan, we switch to a step called distributed summarization, and this is a large portion of the lesson. This is where students are hands-on working with the material. So this is where engineering step number 3 would come in, evaluate possible solutions. So I would divide my students up into groups, and I would have them try to figure out how could we best get this oil out of this container. I would encourage research. We are one-to-one with iPads, so I would encourage my students maybe to look up and see how real world engineers could solve this problem and what they use, and then see what materials could mimic that we have in our classroom for this lesson. So I would encourage them to do research, to look at the materials, to think about what they know about oil and that kind of thing. And I would, of course, go around and monitor as they are working. And then engineering step 4, they would develop a detailed plan. So I would have them write, or they could type it out on their iPad or do a voiceover, and they would tell me what their plan is and why. So what they're going to try and why they chose that method. More of the distributed summarization, engineering step number 5, they would reevaluate. When they're done with their plan, they would read over it and they would think, do we like this, or just any changes that we think need to be made? And after they make any necessary changes or decide that it's good, they will move on to step number 6, which would be to actually carry out the plan. So they would have their tub with their water and their oil, and they would actually carry it out. So they would get the materials they said they were going to use, and they would work on cleaning up the oil spill. Then comes the last step of my lesson plan, which is summarization, which is where we kind of wrap it all up and see what students have learned. So this is where engineering step number 7 would come in, which would be check results. And we would have a whole class discussion. I would bring them back together. I would ask them, so how did your plan work? Did it work? Did it not work? What could have been better? What could have you done differently? And all of that. And then I would allow time for another trial. This would probably push over into the second day. But I think it's important for students, after they see how something worked, that they would get the ability to go back and return to step 4 and develop a new detailed plan and see if they can figure out a way to better clean up the oil spill. Thanks so much.